Welcome to the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, that we call it OPRHP for short, our webinar introducing our grants for parks, preservation, and heritage funded through the state's Environmental Protection Fund. Throughout today's presentation, I will refer you to helpful documents, most of which are available on the State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation's website at parks.ny.gov. To navigate towards the pages I mentioned, scroll to the bottom of the page. Under the heading Resources, select Grants, which will bring you to the OPRHP Grants homepage. The selection titled Consolidated Funding Application will take you to most of the online resources I mentioned. Due to COVID, there was no grant cycle in 2020. In 2019, under this program, we were able to fund 58 projects totaling $21.7 million and representing all 10 of the regional economic development councils. Of the 58 grants, 31 were awarded under parks, 20 for historic preservation, and 7 for heritage areas. To find out more about those awards, about the work of the regional economic development councils, and about your regional council's plans, go to the REDC website at regionalcouncils.ny.gov. In 2021, we have up to $19.5 million for awards, with a maximum grant award of $500,000. If the total project cost is greater than $4 million, up to $750,000 may be requested. Our funding provides assistance for the acquisition, planning, development, and improvement of parks, historic properties, and heritage areas in New York State. All grant awards require some form of long-term protection to ensure that the public benefits from the state's investment. Specifically, parkland that is acquired or improved by a municipality must remain parkland in perpetuity, subject to parkland alienation law. To better understand this rule, you can consult the Handbook on the Alienation and Conversion of Municipal Parkland, which is available on the Parks website at parks.ny.gov/publications under the heading Other Publications. Parkland acquired by a not-for-profit corporation must be protected by conveying a perpetual conservation easement to the state. Parkland developed by a not-for-profit corporation requires a public access covenant. All historic preservation projects require preservation covenants or conservation easements to be conveyed to the state. And heritage area projects will either be subject to parkland alienation law or require public access covenants, preservation covenants, or conservation easements, depending on the project. To apply for our EPF Parks Preservation and Heritage grants, your organization must be a municipality or a not-for-profit corporation. Not-for-profit applicants must register and be pre-qualified in the Grants Gateway to be eligible. And your organization must have an ownership interest in the property that is the focus of the project. Ownership may take the form of fee simple ownership, or a lease, easement, contract, or memorandum of understanding. If the project you are applying for involves acquisition of the property, you must present evidence of the owner's intent to sell, donate, or transfer the property. And if your project involves only planning for a property, you must have the property owner's permission to access the property for the purposes of the project. All parties with an ownership interest in the property, including lien holders, will be required to sign the project agreement and may need to sign documents establishing long-term protections for the property. All lien holders must subordinate their interests to those of the state. Applicants should be aware that they may apply in more than one grant category. For example, under both the Historic Preservation and the Heritage Areas program. But no project will receive more than one award from us in any funding year. Also, while there is no statutory limit on the number of grants one property or one applicant may receive, in the interest of equity and fairness, and in consideration of applicant capacity, it is our policy that applicants having 3 or more open grants with OPRHP should not receive additional awards. All of our EPF grants are for capital projects directed toward the development of property. We can fund planning, acquisition, development, or a combination of these phases. We can fund standalone planning for project-specific planning, such as a structural assessment, feasibility study, or environmental review to determine if a property can be used for the proposed public purpose, or preparation of designs and specifications for rehabilitation of an historic property, or drawing up site designs and schematic drawings for a new park. This funding category is not intended for more general planning projects, such as the planning or environmental review processes of comprehensive open space management or master plans. We can also fund acquisition of real property for park, conservation, preservation, or heritage purposes. For applications that include acquisition, whether that involves purchase, donation, or transfer from another use, the applicant must upload 2 specific documents. The first, evidence of the owner's intent to sell, donate, or transfer the property, and second, a written appraisal valuation, commonly known as a desktop appraisal or exterior-only appraisal, for each parcel that will be acquired or used as match as part of the proposal. Please note, the property acquisition must occur during the project term or within 1 year prior to the application deadline date. If the value of real property is to be used as the applicant's matching share for the development costs, the proposed project will be considered a development project for scoring purposes. The majority of funded projects are for development or construction. Most of your project expenditures must be for capital expenses, but administrative and pre-development costs are also allowed. Allowable costs of administration might include procurement costs, grant administration, construction supervision, and/or a final project audit. Grant administration costs should not exceed 10% of the grant amount. Your development project may include pre-development costs, such as design fees or other professional fees to prepare construction documents or satisfy other pre-construction requirements. Also eligible as a pre-development cost is archaeology, which may include fieldwork, report writing, curation of artifacts, and interpretation. If a shovel is going into the ground, your budget should take into account the need for an archaeological survey. Pre-development costs must be incurred during the project term or in the 3 years prior to the application deadline. Pre-development costs should not exceed 15% of the construction costs. There are also many expenses that should not be included in your project budget. Comprehensive planning, master planning, management plans, and open space plans should not be included. The cost of preparing your CFA application should not be included. Training, travel, on-the-job training wages, financing costs such as working capital, marketing, taxes, interest, fundraising, the purchase of any operational or maintenance equipment, overhead or operating expenses, including indirect costs, rent and lease costs, salaries and wages, and contingencies, or any costs that are not adequately justified or that do not directly support the project. All of these are ineligible costs for grant reimbursement. Applications for EPF Parks Preservation and Heritage Grants are considered in 3 program categories. Our Parks program is designed to preserve, rehabilitate, or restore lands, waters, or structures for park, recreation, or conservation purposes, and for structural assessment and/or planning for such projects. Except for projects on state lands, any not-for-profit applicant applying under the Parks program must provide a resolution of municipal endorsement passed by the governing body of the municipality in which the project is located, which stipulates the municipality's approval and endorsement of the application. An example of an acceptable resolution of municipal endorsement can be found on the OPRHP Consolidated Funding Application webpage that I directed you to previously. To repeat, you get there from our website at parks.ny.gov, scroll down to the bottom of the page under Resources, select Grants, and then click Consolidated Funding Application on the menu. Our Historic Preservation Program is for projects to improve, protect, preserve, rehabilitate, restore, or acquire properties that are listed on the state and national registers of historic places, as well as for structural assessments and/or planning for such projects. If a property is not currently listed but is scheduled for nomination review at the State Board for Historic Preservation meeting of either June 10th or September 9th, 2021, it is eligible for application purposes. Questions about listing should be directed to the OPRHP Survey and National Register Unit at area code 518-268-2213. Historic preservation grant funds cannot be used for constructing contemporary additions on an historic property unless that work will provide universal access and/or eliminate code deficiencies for access and egress, such as an elevator or stair tower. Multi-purpose additions to historic buildings and freestanding new construction on historic properties are not eligible for this grant program. For projects on sectarian properties, defined as properties used for worship or owned by sectarian organizations, properties such as rectories, convents, cemeteries, synagogues, residences, schools, grant assistance can fund only costs necessary for historically accurate restoration to restore and preserve the historic integrity of the historic property, and only to the extent that those costs exceed the cost of basic rehabilitation. Information and instructions on how to structure and present a sectarian project can be found on the OPRHP Consolidated Funding Application webpage. Our Heritage Area program is for projects identified in the approved management plans for heritage areas designated under New York State Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation Law. For the 18 currently active and eligible heritage areas, exact boundaries and maps are available on our website and are mapped on our grants map for CFA. You'll find instructions for accessing that at the OPRHP Consolidated Funding Application webpage. Heritage area projects may be for the acquisition or development of historically or culturally significant sites, districts, buildings, structures, objects, or natural features, or for the development of interpretation, recreational, or informational exhibits, materials, and facilities which orient the visitor to the resources of the local heritage area or to the state heritage area program. To be considered for heritage area grant funding, projects must be consistent with the 4 heritage area goals of preservation, education, economic development, and recreation. Applicants under the Heritage Areas program must provide the written approval and endorsement of the project by the local heritage area management entity, if it is not the project sponsor. The letter should reference the appropriate heritage area management plan and relevant heritage area resources and goals. Contact information for the heritage areas is listed on the OPRHP Consolidated Funding Application webpage and can also be found by going to the OPRHP Grants homepage, clicking on Grant Programs, then on Heritage Areas Program, then on Contact the Heritage Area. The EPF Parks Preservation and Heritage Program is a reimbursement program. You must be prepared and capable of funding your project first. You front the expenditures, and then we reimburse you a percentage of eligible expenditures. Applicants can request funding up to 50% of the approved project cost, or up to 75% if the project is located in a zip code tabulation area, or ZCTA, with a poverty rate of 10% or more. If you know the zip code tabulation area of the project location, you can find its poverty level in a document linked to the OPRHP Consolidated Funding Application webpage. If you do not know the correct ZCTA, follow the instructions in the document using the Grants Map for CFA on that same page. These are matching grants. As you answer questions in the application, be sure to describe your matching share in detail, including the amount, source, type, and when it will be available. Please note that other EPF funding is not allowable as match for this grant program. For example, the Department of Environmental Conservation's Climate Smart Communities, Water Quality Improvement Project, or Mohawk River Watershed Grants Program, and the Department of State's Local Waterfront Revitalization Program all utilize Environmental Protection Fund funding and therefore cannot be used as the matching share for OPRHP's EPF program. State and Municipal Facilities Program, also called SAM funding, is another source that cannot be used as match or be considered a local share, but can be used to pay for additional project costs that are over and above the EPF award and its required local match. We want your application to be successful, and to that end, we offer the following tips for success. Your most important first step is to read the 2021 CFA guidance document, available on the OPRHP Consolidated Funding Application website. There, you will find crucial information about who is eligible for funding. For example, not-for-profit organizations are eligible for funding, but only if they are pre-qualified in the Grants Gateway at 4 p.m. on July 30 when the application window closes. Make sure your documentation is complete and current. You will also find information about what the application requirements are. In particular, you will see that all applications must furnish attachments like maps and photos. Other attachments are required only for certain programs or circumstances. For instance, for projects to undertake work in a state park or historic site, the application must include letters of support from the OPRHP Regional Director and Capital Facilities Manager. And most important, the guidance document lists the grant selection criteria. These criteria list exactly what we are looking for in your application and how many points we assign to each criterion. Please note, although there is one application for all program categories, the project impact criteria for parks, historic preservation, and heritage areas differ between programs. Be alert to those differences as you answer application questions. You've read the guidance document and listened to this webinar, but the best place to go with your questions about our grant programs is to the Regional Grants Administrator for the county where your project is located. Contact information is listed at parks.ny.gov/grants/contact.aspx. There are a lot of questions in the CFA, especially if you are applying to multiple programs. If you are applying to multiple agencies, you may be asked to answer questions shared by multiple funders. Be sure you address all the programs covered by that question when you are answering shared questions. Questions specific to a single agency or program are probably designed to elicit information directly related to that program's requirements or scoring criteria, so you would be wise to provide pertinent answers. Don't just cut and paste from some other answer. Many of the CFA questions include scoring tips, which will offer guidance on providing a thorough answer or lead you to helpful resources. One such resource is the online layered map at the OPR-HP Consolidated Funding Application website. This map will help you answer many CFA questions, including identifying the appropriate Regional Economic Development Council and the appropriate zip code tabulation area, providing poverty data, documenting whether the project is listed in the state and national registers or located in a heritage area, serving as a resource for the required 1 to 24,000 scale topographic or planimetric map, even providing a basis for developing a schematic plan for the project location. The instruction document on our website, Using the Grants Map for CFA, outlines how to use the features of the layered map. Many questions will ask you both to describe and to document some facet of your project. It is crucial that you attach supporting documentation, whether it is a photograph to show the urgent need for a repair, or resumes to document the experience of your administrative team. Show us the evidence. As noted before, the funding priorities and grant selection criteria are listed in the 2021 CFA guidance document. Please note especially the OPR-HP Commissioner's priorities for 2021, which are projects that restore or conserve the natural communities where land meets water, projects designed to enhance inclusion by removing barriers, providing accommodation, and expanding the visitor experience, walkable public spaces in underserved neighborhoods, projects that promote and complement transformational projects across the state, especially in disadvantaged communities, to address and prepare for the impacts of climate change, and projects undertaken by OPR-HP Friends organizations or other partner groups that occur in state parks or historic sites. Documenting reasonableness of costs is extremely important to the success of your application, worth 20 of the 70 points assigned by OPR-HP. The CFA budget section asks you to break down your total project budget by agency and funding source. If you are applying to multiple agencies, make sure your request to each agency is clearly delineated and all financial documents are consistent. OPR-HP will ask you to attach a cost share summary itemized for each element of the proposed project. Be sure to read the scoring tips section, follow the link to the OPR-HP website, and use the examples found in the cost share and budget help documents. As you draw up your budget, plan well. If project costs increase post-award, the grant award will not be adjusted upward. Some cost elements may be allowed retroactively, but be sure to read the rules in the guidance document. When in doubt, check with the Regional Grants Administrator for your county. Readiness is another aspect of reasonableness of cost. Having matching share in place, permits applied for, seeker completed, and RFP drafted are all excellent indicators of project readiness. However, while we are looking for shovel-ready projects, you should be wary of taking any preliminary steps that would not meet state requirements, such as hiring a contractor without following correct bidding procedures. Your Regional Grants Administrator can answer your questions about administrative requirements. Feasibility is the third aspect of reasonableness of cost. You need to demonstrate the capacity to carry the project to fruition on time and on budget, and to maintain it as a public benefit for the long term. In the end, it is up to you to present a concise, clear, and compelling case that your project will be a priority for state funding. Start now to gather your documentation and hone your proposal. The application deadline is July 30 at 4 p.m. We hope this webinar and our guidance document provide all the information that you need to prepare a successful application for OPRHP's Environmental Protection Fund Parks Preservation and Heritage Program. To find links to all the documents, forms, and resources I have mentioned, I direct you once again to our agency website at parks.ny.gov. Scroll down to the bottom of the page under Resources, select Grants, and then click Consolidated Funding Application on the menu. And if you have any questions, I encourage you to reach out to your Regional Grants Administrator or to the General Grants mailbox as shown on this slide. On behalf of the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, I wish you good luck.